Hey music makers, welcome back to the studio. My name is Dean and today we're jumping into another creative session. This is where I take you behind the scenes and show you how I, as someone who's making original music and producing music for paying clients, build out a creative project. And the motivation for these videos really came from my experience of having people show me some things which I really appreciated, or from some of my favorite artists who I wish would show me their process. And so as an artist, as a producer, I want to open up the curtains a bit and show you how I create a pop song. And I'm not here to guarantee that any tip is going to be magic, but the goal is that you're going to learn 1, 2, 3 things that you can add into your creative process that's going to help you become a better songwriter and a better producer. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so step 1 was creating my keyboard part. And I went over to my library. I started looking around in places that I'm familiar with, and that is synthesizer under the classics. And I have a few keyboards in here that I like. I like Beautiful Melody, Dream Dancer, Micropulse, and Square Bells. Those are kind of my go-to keyboard sounds when I'm making a soft pop song. So I went with the Micropulse for this particular song because I wanted a long, smooth note. So let me hit play on that and give you an idea of this part. All right, so here is my little secret tip. So whenever I recorded this looks like a kind of complex line here. What I did was I actually just played my chords first and I recorded them like that. And so I went through the whole part, recorded just chords. Then I went back and just re-recorded right over the top of it that little lead line. And so that is my hack for when you're coming up with keyboard parts or any kind of instrument parts. You don't have to play everything at once. Next, after that, I knew I wanted a snap. And so I'm going to show you this beat. What is going on with that little snap sauce right there? So what I did is I went into the loops library and I'm going to show you my favorite snap sound. I typed in afloat and there's this beat called the afloat beat. And you hear that little snap in it. Well, all I did was I dragged it in and basically I snipped off the rest of the beat until I just had the snap sound. But it doesn't normally sound echoey like that. So if I hit B on my typing keyboard, you can see that I came down here and I added a delay, or actually an echo plugin. So when I click on that, you can see where I have it set to 16th notes. I turned the wet way down because I didn't want it to go ka 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 ka. I just wanted a light, subtle little cha 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 cha. So with it off, you have which now I'm rethinking it because that sounds awesome. But we'll keep it in for now and we'll listen to it in context later, which is where it really matters. So next on the list was my bass performance. And if you follow this channel, you know that I go to synthesizer bass and I love me some agile synth bass, ladies and gentlemen. Let's play it. Come on. So a couple things to highlight in this. If I double click on this sound right here, all of my notes are at a very low velocity because if I turn this way up, it has a very intense grinding sound, which is really cool, but that's not what I want for the song. So I kept everything around 15. So it gives that soft kind of intimate feel that I'm going for. Then when I click back over to my controls window, normally it comes on buzzy. That's the stock sound. I was clicking around here trying some different ones and I liked rubbery. Don't ask me why, I just liked it. I thought it fit with the vibe of the song, so I went with rubbery. Don't overthink little decisions like that, especially in the creative process. It took me like 10 seconds to go, oh, that sounds cool. Let's move on. Next, I knew I wanted a pad. That's a very common go-to instrument for me. And as usual, I'm in the synthesizer menu, I'm under pad, and I tried a couple different ones. And out of this really large list, I only have about 3 pads that I really use. I use the Airways, I love the Breathy Vox, and then there's 1 or 2 more down here. And in this instance, I went with the Airways because it has like this real breathy, almost like standing in a giant room or a giant mountain range or something. So I'm gonna let you hear that. So the way that I choose the notes for this pad, I follow pretty closely the chord that I have, but I usually change 1 or 2 notes, not necessarily making them totally different, but just giving it a little bit of color. Now, don't do clashing notes where it's like kind of fighting against each other. I'm talking about complementary notes. So now let's move on to the beat. And I just made a pretty straightforward beat using this Boutique 808 kit. Let's listen. But when I listened to it, I wanted a little bit more warmth to it. I wanted a little more something, oomph on it. And so what I will do at times is I will take my drum performance, I'll highlight it, hit Command C to copy it, and then I will actually create a new track and paste it into the new track. So it's actually the same drum performance, but I choose a totally different kit, and I aim for one that kind of complements the sound of my current drum kit. So if I play just my Boutique 808, so for me, that was really working. It added almost this like real life drum sound to it. And I know it's kind of an odd combination to do a very electronic hip hop style drum kit and then to mix it in with this Blue Ridge, which is like a brush roll, almost folksy type drum kit. But to me, they're really working. And again, it's all about context. So let's play it in context. Anyways, let's move on. Please do not overthink that. So next was vocals. My favorite, of course. And so here in the vocal track, I did what I call a quick mix. That is where I put just a few effects on my vocal track because that helps me feel creative when I'm writing vocal melodies. And so what that looks like for me, if I hit B on my typing keyboard, that is a bit of master echo, a bit of master reverb. Then I hit E and track and I do some pitch correction. 84 is my magic number. It may not be yours, but it's mine. I hit limit to key because I know I'm in the key of C, so it'll sound right. And so with those few effects on, I sang this line. I was breaking down, I was on my phone, yeah. So a few things to note, of course, I don't have my words yet. I'm just coming up with melody lines to see what fits within the context of my song. And then me personally, I usually fill in those melodies with lyrics. Some people do it the opposite way around. There's not a right or wrong way. But one thing I'll say about doing these effects before you record is that there is some latency, meaning a slight delay when you hit the record button. So what I'll do is record with one headphone on and one headphone off. So that way I can hear the processing and the creativity in one ear. And then in my other ear, I hear my voice in real time, avoiding the latency issue. Now, I know some of you are going to ask, well, how did you come up with the melodies or the cadence of that vocal? And I can't tell you exactly how to make a vocal melody, but here's a few tips, a few hacks that I will use from time to time. One is to think about your vocal as a rhythmic instrument, meaning kind of like your drums. And so in this case, I actually started my phrase at the first snare in my drum set. Check this out. I was breaking down, yeah. I was on my phone, yeah. So a lot of times I'll play off of my drums and I will actually use a kick or a snare to be my entry point or my exit point for my vocal phrase. Then comes the other side of writing vocal melodies, and that is, of course, the melody itself or the notes that I'm going to sing. And so a lot of times what I like to do is highlight just my bass line, maybe a little bit of percussion, and then sing up against my bass line because I know if I'm fitting with the melody of my bass line, it's also going to fit with the melody of the rest of my instrumentation. Let's give it a listen. I was breaking down, yeah. I was on my phone, yeah. So that's two hacks that I use, but honestly, the biggest hack is just trying idea after idea after idea. Put on your cycle region, hit play on it, and just try singing stuff. This was not my first idea. This is probably idea number 3, 4, 5, and I finally landed on an idea that I felt like fit with the melody of my song and with the rhythm of my song. So with all of these elements together, let's listen to our working verse. I was breaking down, I was on my phone, yeah. I was breaking chains, yeah. I was on my phone. So not bad. bad. I'm definitely liking the vibe of it. This is hitting home with my particular style. And let's move over to our chorus area here. And so of course I want things to progress dynamically when I hit this chorus. And one way that I do that is to simply change my chord progression. I have all the same elements, all the same instruments, but I just switch things up as far as the progression goes. Check this out. Now, one other little trick that I will show you is here in my Airways performance, I actually went up an octave for this chorus because it just sounds brighter, it sounds more brilliant, more intense when you go up that octave with this particular synth. And so you can see my verse is hovering around this range, and then my chorus is hovering around this range, which just gives it a lift when it comes into the chorus. Then after that, I heard this little piano line, and it's nothing fancy, it's just this little arpeggiated note back and forth. And if you're wondering how I got this kind of ambient piano sound, I have a video about that called How I Make a Big Ambient Piano Sound in GarageBand. I'll put the link in the description. So this piano just adds one more layer into the mix, which adds dynamics, which adds power to our chorus. Let's listen. So I really like the way that feels. And then I wanted to increase not only the instrument or the melodic intensity, but I wanted to increase the rhythmic intensity. And so I actually brought in one of GarageBand's automatic drummers. This is Austin. You can create him and find him under Songwriter, Austin Ridgebrush. And I just added his performance on top of my existing drum performances. I brought his volume back a little bit so it's not just crowding the mix, but he's gonna add a little bit of intensity, a little bit of warmth, a little bit of dynamics to this chorus. And I just have to say, I love when he does this little drum roll. It just gets me every time. I just want to give him a hug, be like, Austin, you're the man. Good job. Thanks, buddy. So then, of course, we get to vocals. And so I have the lead line here, and it's the same process. I'm listening to my instrumentation. I'm listening to my kick and snare. And I came up with this as the lead idea, and I'm going to hit play on that. Yes, I love you. Yes, after that, I added a harmony to start stacking on things. Yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. And this is where I'm going to stop and give you a really helpful tip, or maybe just jump on a soapbox. I don't really know. But you can hear these are not perfect vocal takes, but that's not what I'm doing at this point in the process. I am in creative mode. I'm not in get everything perfect mode. I am in the idea stage. And so if you're creating songs, you have to let yourself create. You have to let yourself do some vocal takes that aren't that great, that aren't perfect, but they get the idea across. And then you can keep moving and kind of riding the creative wave, if you will, because sometimes we get caught up in trying to do this vocal take 20 times. We waste 30 minutes on it, and let's say you only had an hour to make music. Well, you just spent half of your time trying to perfect a part that doesn't matter at this stage in the game. Now later, when I get into production mode and mixing mode, I'm absolutely gonna go back, re-record everything, and I'm gonna do a really good job. I'm gonna take 20 takes if I have to get the perfect take, but that's for later in the process. Don't waste your time there now. So second to the last thing I'll show you, I started stacking more background vocals. So what I did was actually hit Command D to duplicate the processing on this background vocal so I didn't have to do it over again. And then I took this and actually added the Vocal Transformer plugin, which if you go down to pitch, you'll see Vocal Transformer. And if I pull that up, I did one as a high octave, put the formant to about 4, and it sounds like a chipmunk. Check it out. Then this is the same thing, but actually pitched up the harmony. It sounds so strange. And then the last one is actually what I call a monster voice. So it's the same thing, but it's pitched down instead of pitched up. So you can hear that. Oh, it sounds absolutely beautiful, doesn't it? Well, not really, but let's bring it into context. So I'm liking it. And again, I'm not saying these are perfect. They're placeholders. They're creative placeholders. So then the last thing that I did was kind of an ad-lib vocal where you just sing in between the phrases essentially and re-emphasize what was sung here in between that. So let's hear that. I created a little outro where I basically just took out the beat, took out the rhythm of it. Let's hear that. So I thought that'd be a nice, soft, tasteful way to end the song. And so of course, if I was actually making this into a full song, I would go from verse to chorus. I would go back into a verse. I'd go back into the chorus, building on dynamics as I go. I'd have probably a bridge in there, a final chorus in there. And then this would be at the very end of my song. This would finish everything off, but that's just a little hack. You can keep the instruments, you can keep the vocals, just take out your rhythmic elements, and it just gives it a softer feel to close out. All right, so are you catching my vibe here? I'm in creative mode, I'm building, and right now I was in this project for about 1 hour, and I'm really pleased with the amount of progress that I was able to make. I have a solid verse idea, I have a solid chorus idea, and to me that was an hour well used. Like I said, if you're sitting here figuring out what snare sound is going to be right for your song and you spend 45 minutes doing it, then you're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Just go with one that sounds decent, get your beat down, then later in the production and mixing phase, you can spend all day if you want on that snare sound. So now with all of those elements together, let's go back and play this thing from start to finish. This has been Dean from the studio. Thanks for creating with me today, and I hope this encourages you to go create in your home studio.